also heard the Mesoamerican link that really gets me going. And I share this all the time, and I'm hoping it's not a lie because I do share this story a lot, and it's always like, I get chills when I say it, and hopefully others do too. And it's the Mesoamerican method of human sacrifice and how that related to the Savior descending to the Nephites. Do you know what I'm referring to? I'm hoping so.
Yeah, and probably I think Mark mentioned that in his presentation, right?
Yes,
Yeah, so the core of that idea came from Mark Wright. And then
right.
in discussing it with him, I said, yeah, but you're missing something.
Okay.
So the idea is Mark Wright, and I put an envelope on it that I think explains things. But what he was talking about is he said, okay, Christ comes down. And the first thing you have to understand about Christ coming down is that this is pretty spectacular. There isn't anybody looking at this saying, gee, I wonder if that's a man descending on a rope. It's kind of, you know that this is a bit special. And so what they know is that a God has descended. What they need to know is that the God who descended was the Messiah. So there's two things in Nephite, and if you read it right in the title page, you're supposed to know that Jesus Christ is the eternal God. Jesus Christ is Yahweh. And let's see, what's the rest of the phrase? Why is that suddenly out of my head?
You're testing me now. I should know that, shouldn't I?
Jesus is the Christ, the eternal God. There, I got it right. Okay. So Jesus is the Christ, and the Christ, of course, being the Messiah, the eternal God. Well, why do you have those two things? Well, in the Nephite world, what they taught, and if you remember Abinadi teaching this, he says, God himself will come down. So they teach about Christ in his mortal ministry, but it isn't, Jesus Christ, the mortal man. It's God himself will come down. Yahweh will come down. And so they see a God coming down. Now what they have to know is this God the one who performed the messianic sacrifice, the atoning sacrifice? And so what Mark was saying is, when he shows the prints in the hands and in the feet, those are killing wounds. So he shows them in the side, and they all know that that's a killing wound because they will do heart sacrifice, and they know what killing wounds are. Now, what's really fascinating is comparing that with what happens with Christ when he comes to the 12. When it comes to the 12, I got to get this right. He shows them the wounds on the hands and the feet, and then the one in the side. For the people in the old world, they knew that Christ had died. They knew him. They saw him die. So when he comes back, they know, exactly that, this is a resurrected being. But they need to know that it's the very one. And so they see the prints in the hands, and that proves that the person standing before them is the very Jesus who has been sacrificed, who was on the cross. In Mesoamerica, it was different. He shows the wound in the side and then the hands. And what is different there is they'd never seen it dead. Their God had never died. They didn't know that. They had a God who was there, and so they had to know that he had previously died so that he could be resurrected. And so they show him the wound in the side. So the order in which those things are shown is different, but different because the people had a different question that had to be answered. Right. So keep doing that one. That one's a good one. I borrow that from all the time.
Yeah, I love that one, especially describing the gruesome manner of the Mesoamerican human sacrifice, which I think they would.
Well, there is that.
Yeah, they would while they were still alive, right? They would pull the heart out from the side.
They'd make the cut and reach in, and within seconds they have a beating heart that they would hold out. So it wasn't pleasant. These were not pleasant people most of the time. But there is an interesting iconographic scene that might, again, if you take all of these things about the Book of Mormon, there's some really big connections. And so we talk about the historical connections like the Teotihuacanos and the reason for the demise of the Nephites. Once you fit that in and you say, I can accept that cultural context, then other little tiny things that you see can't be proof of the context, but you can see how they would be influenced and they would come into the Book of Mormon. So Mark again was talking about, Alma, who says, do you have the image of God graven on your face? Well, none of us ever carve things into our face, except in Mesoamerica, you carve God masks. You have the image of God on your face that has been carved. And that is a concept that they would understand, that concept that you put on the mask and you become God. You have the image of God on your face. It's absolutely understandable with that background. Now, does it prove the background? No. But does it help us understand? Yes. There's another one where there's a picture of a heart sacrifice where the man is splayed backwards over the stone, which is how they do these things, in the heart sacrifice. But there's a tree of life coming out of his heart. Well, how many seeds are we planting in the heart to grow up to be trees of life? Where is this imagery coming from? So once you know that the imagery is in the world, you start seeing things in the Book of Mormon. You go, oh yeah, they probably had that context with them. We get to King Benjamin's speech, and King Benjamin is very adamant that that a man can't spill his own blood and atone. Well, why would he say that? I mean, that's a weird thing to say. Well, that's what everybody was doing all around them. They were spilling their own blood. That's how the kings, sort of kept things going for the Mayan society. So, this is a concept that they were familiar with. And it's right at the beginning. There's a lot of things right at the beginning of King Benjamin's speech that without context make no sense at all. Because he gets up and he spends, X amount of time saying, here's the kind of king I'm not. I do not come on to your podcast and say, by the way, I'm not an astrophysicist, I'm not an astronaut, I'm not a cook. We would all think I was totally nuts if I did. Yeah. But we read it in King Benjamin's speech because he was a great person. We read it, we just skim over it because that's how we read. But you're reading, you go, this is weird. Why is he saying this? Well, because everybody else is doing that. He's differentiating himself from another type of king with which they are all familiar. And so this is the outside world, Mesoamerica, informing the Book of Mormon. And so that's what we mean by that phrase. So we're not going to go through archaeology and say, I'm going to find a menorah. I'm pretty sure they didn't bring one with them. I have no idea what a Nephite pot would look like, but I would assume that the Nephites cooked in pots that looked like everybody else's pots. I'm a Latter-day Saint, and my pots look like pretty much everybody else's pots. There's no such thing as a Mormon frying pan. So for material culture, we're just not going to find it. What we are going to find is looking at that text, reading it carefully and saying, here is how that world informs what we see in the text.
Thanks for watching For All the Saints. This show needs your help to grow. Please like the video, comment your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone you think would enjoy it. Thank you.